Hello, my name is Justin Merhoff. I'm the Director of Security at DQ Systems, and we have an awesome panel for you today. I'm going to give you a quick background on myself, and then I'm going to introduce each of our panelists, and we will get to the questions. So I have a career within cybersecurity that goes back about 26 years. And about a year and a half ago, I was lucky enough to be selected to be the Director of Security at DQ Systems. What that afforded me wasn't just becoming the Director of Security at a software company. It opened my eyes to the importance of accessibility as applies to cybersecurity. And I'm getting I'm getting emotional already. The current state of the cybersecurity landscape is very inaccessible to the end users that we're meaning to protect, and it's creating barriers for people to actually enter into the space. And we will be discussing those topics in this talk. I was lucky enough, and I'll go in this order, in the order that I met these panelists, and they will get to the questions. Once I joined DQ Systems, myself and Patrick Sturdivant had a meeting probably within the first 2 weeks of me joining, because we both had a passion for the cybersecurity field and the accessibility fields to come together, because together we can actually make change. So Patrick, I'll let you do a brief intro.
Thank you, Justin. My name is Patrick Sturdivant. I'm a VP and Principal Strategy Consultant with DQ. I am totally blind. I'm a screen reader user. I've been doing digital accessibility for about 12 years. Prior to being with DQ for the last couple of years, I was with a large financial services company where security was really important. So when I was working here at DQ and Justin got announced as our new director of security, I thought, well, I ought to meet him and say hi. And that's kind of where it all started. I'm looking forward to chatting with you all today.
Thank you, Patrick. And once Patrick and I started talking, I was very eager in trying to gain awareness about the importance of accessibility and cybersecurity within the cybersecurity space. So I went to LinkedIn and started searching for potential other people like me. And I didn't really find many people. So I created a LinkedIn group and I started posting different articles that I found. And there was one research article from Dr. Karen Renaud that I read that literally blew my mind, of how cybersecurity doesn't necessarily just have to be accessible, it needs to be inclusive. And I started talking about that, and someone commented that I need to meet Ali Uyisa, and that is where my friendship began. So Ali, give a brief intro of yourself.
Hi, it's really good to be here. Yeah, I'm Ali. I'm co-founder at Pheasant, and our mission is to make cybersecurity accessible and inclusive. And I have a background in software engineering, so I knew a little bit about accessibility, but it was when Pheasant started and we started researching, okay, what are the gaps when it comes to inclusion in cybersecurity, we found out that accessibility is where the biggest gap is, and lots of people are affected negatively, and it's negatively affecting organizations as well. So when I saw that comment and we had that conversation with Justin, we spoke for about 6 hours, and he's really become a mentor to me, and I'm really grateful to have had that conversation with you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having this session. Thanks.
Once again, I'm blushing and humbled by your comments. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Emily Keel. Emily Keel and I met via Google search. In my preparation for one of my first webinars on this topic, one of my colleagues challenged that I need stories to really get people to understand how important this is. So I searched for accessibility problems within cybersecurity, and Emily happened to have written a story about her experiences within the university. and we met and have been working together ever since. Emily, just a brief intro.
Buddy, my name is Emily Keel, and I'm really excited to be here. So thank you so much for including me on this panel. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Cincinnati, and I have my degree in interdisciplinary studies with concentrations in IT and English. And the reason I wasn't able to get a degree in IT itself is because of the accessibility issues that I faced, not in cybersecurity only, but in technology and in the IT classes globally. So in the degree program as a whole, I'm really excited to be an advocate for accessibility, digital accessibility in education, and to continue paving the way for accessibility in cybersecurity for other blind people like myself. So thanks again.
Awesome. So I just want to give another little bit of intro. So on this panel, we have different variants of experience within accessibility and within cybersecurity. So we do really have a good wealth of knowledge to be able to speak on this. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my questions, and we're going to open with Emily. How has your experience with digital accessibility shaped your work? Do you have any advice for cybersecurity professionals that you could give?
Absolutely. So my experience with digital accessibility is the way that I am able to work. So the level of accessibility of digital tools impacts it is the ability that I have to do my job is entirely dependent on the level of accessibility. So my experience in school taught me to be resilient, but more importantly, find workarounds and to be creative and to learn about the workarounds that other blind people use, other screen reader users use, and then how to turn those into real solutions for myself and others. So being collaborative is really important. And then Justin, what was the other part of your question?
Do you have any advice for cybersecurity professionals?
That's right. Um, think about accessibility as inclusion. So people with disabilities, yes, it might seem like a marginalized group, or it is a marginalized group. It might seem like a marginal group. But it impacts individuals' entire ability to do the work. And so inclusion also includes people who wouldn't be able to use the technology in the first place. So thinking simplicity is best for people no matter the experience they have with the software, or their abilities, anything like that. So including as many people as possible will yield the best results.
And Patrick, go ahead and I'll restate the question. So how has your experience in digital accessibility, shaped your work? And then do you have any advice for cybersecurity professionals from that experience?
So just to set the stage, I before I got into digital accessibility, I was pretty much a back then what would be considered a full stack developer. I never worked in the security space, worked in IT. So I'm coming at it from a user perspective. And my perspective is it can be very frustrating when you're trying to be secure and trying to follow the rules and trying to use the latest security tool that your organization has brought in-house, but it's not accessible. You have to find workarounds. You sometimes have to ask for help. And sometimes security is not as tight as it should be when you're having to ask other people for assistance, training, being aware of all the latest updates and knowledge you need on security from a user perspective. I can't tell you how many security courses I would take where they just weren't accessible. And I ended up having to get a reader to come sit with me to read me these courses online and let me take my test and get the credit so that I would be permitted committed to continue doing my job and to be secure. So what I would say to security professionals is if you truly value the work you're doing and you truly want to help everyone, you're not doing that if you don't consider that at least 1 in 4 people in the US has a disability. Do you really want 1/4 of your users you're trying to protect not be protected, and or provide potentially a way that your organization could be impacted due to a security breach because your tools, your training, your methods didn't include the fact that not everyone does things the same way. Not everyone has perfect vision and 2 really good hands that can run a mouse and that can see everything. People have different abilities and you can't discount them. People who are disabled are here to stay. Technology is the great equalizer. We're not going to give it up. We've got to be secure. Please include us.
And Ali, go ahead and ask you the same question, and then I will ask it myself once you're done. How has your
Yes.
experience in digital accessibility shaped your work, and what advice can you give to cybersecurity professionals?
Yeah, for me, digital accessibility has shaped everything, literally everything I do. Now I'm not talking from the user's perspective, I'm talking from, the work that I do. And, the more I learn about it, the more I want to incorporate accessibility into everything I do. And it even includes, the work that we do with Cyberlock as well. From a user experience perspective, I've had experiences where I'm faced with very bad user experience, trying to log in and like it's not working. And, imagine the kind of frustration I get with those bad websites. But then I try to imagine how that must be affecting people with disabilities, right? It's like that, but on steroids. Think of the worst user experience that you've ever had on any product or online, and then multiply that by 100. That's the kind of experience that a lot of people have. And if they're not able to do the work or live in a secure manner, people will find workarounds and do it in a way that is insecure, in a way that you don't want them to do it. So think of it as accessibility is user experience. The better your accessibility is, the better user experience you're going to get, and the more allied you will be with users. I mean, we know we're all trying to build a better security culture. We're all trying to get the users and the customers on our side. Well, if it's not accessible, then those people are not on your side. They're even less secure, which is going into the second question. Think about the risk that is being posed to the people and the risk to the organization as well. If, just like Patrick said, if your security awareness training isn't inclusive, then it means that there are people who have not been trained, who don't have the same level of knowledge, who don't have what they need to protect themselves, to stay safe online. And that means that your security awareness program is broken. And there's also legal risks as well. I know in the UK, the Equality Act states that people can be disadvantaged in the workplace, right? And that's illegal. You could get sued for that. So if someone is not able to interact or to engage with security training that is critical to their work, or they're not able to access systems that are critical to their work, they are being disadvantaged in the workplace, and that's illegal. So yeah, that's my advice to security professionals. Don't assume that everybody accesses things in the same way. Try to think about different perspectives and try to make sure that it's inclusive. Thanks.
Thank you all. So I'm going to take this at the end, and then we'll go to the next question. So for me personally, how digital accessibility has shaped my work, it's completely changed my career goals. I thought I was just on track to become a CISO maybe one day, maybe not in the current CISO climate, but that was what I was targeting as a chief information security officer. So now coming to DQ and becoming aware of digital accessibility and the importance of it, I can't properly secure everyone within DQ if I do not provide security solutions that are accessible. Bottom line, that's not a DQ mantra, that's a security mantra. And we should all, at all of our organizations, take that and make sure that our solutions are useful and accessible. It's very easy. Use a user feedback loop. You do not have to ask directly, who needs excessive accommodations. Just say, hey, we have this security program. How accessible is it? Are you able to read policies? Are you able to understand them at a cognitive level? Because I would probably guess that they don't. My advice would be, like I said, use for cybersecurity professionals. Put user feedback loops in place. Listen to the people that you're trying to secure, because without accessibility, you do not have security. This is not an HR problem. This is not a DEIA problem. This is a security problem. And we as professionals have to make sure that this is fixed, and we can. So, Ali, what are some challenges and barriers that people with disabilities face when accessing and using cybersecurity systems and resources? And actually, sorry, Ali, Patrick, could you answer that one so we actually have a user experience?
So this is coming from the user. What first comes to mind, just recently, I was in a really sticky situation. I made a commitment to get you're gonna laugh, my tile man some grout, and and couldn't find it, so I had to order it. And the only place that really had it, I had to order it online, and their accessibility was pretty bad. The whole process of being secure, credit card processing, and using the website. To make a long story short, what I had to do was call up a good friend and have them log in to their website as me. I had to give them my password. I had to trust them with my credit card number to put the order in, process the order, and get back out. Now, I was lucky that I'd known this person a long time and I trusted them, but it was still kind of uncomfortable because I know what I should be doing, and I shouldn't be giving my credit card, my password all out to another person to place the order, but I didn't know what else to do. This was because their website, including their security, was very, very inaccessible. But sometimes when you have to do desperate things, you take desperate measures. And we, as people who have disabilities, should not be put in that position. The tools that we're given to do online transactions and to be safe need to be safe for everyone, not just people who are able-bodied.
And Emily, I'm going to go ahead and ask you this question, and then Ali, the next one will be for you and I. So, what are some of the challenges and barriers that you face? And I would really love for you to talk about your experience with digital forensics.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to follow Patrick up on this because exactly what he said, inaccessibility obstructs independence, and it's not like people with disabilities don't have enough problems being independent. So having to give someone your personal information to help, log into a website, that's such a common occurrence, and it's so unsafe. But in terms of digital forensics, I took a class, so it was a complete inability to use the software to do the class. So I wouldn't be able to go into that profession. That's just one more profession that I can check off the list of things that I don't have the ability to do at the moment. And it was the industry standard digital forensics toolkits that I wrote an audit for, which is the paper that I believe Justin we first connected over. And in terms of digital forensics, it was a complete inability to use the software. There were no workarounds that I could find to use it. And it was explaining to my professor why I couldn't use the software. So the entire class, instead of doing the work and learning about, digital forensics and learning about the tools, I was fighting accessibility barriers and then having to go to my professor and explain why I couldn't do it instead of doing it. And then it comes down to the people that are in charge don't have any idea about accessibility. I had professors who had been in technology uh, fields for dozens of years and had never heard of a screen reader before, had never met a screen reader user, which is irritating, having to start every semester explaining like the basis of how I access my education. It's it really makes you feel like a toddler when you're put in that situation, which again is not something that people with disabilities need more of, not something that we need help with. Um, but having access to that information uh, allows people to be more independent and to have access to job opportunities and opportunities in education.
That was wonderfully said by both of you. So, Ali, how can cybersecurity professionals and organizations that ensure that their security policies, procedures, technologies are accessible for all users?
Thanks. That's a good question. I think the first step really is like recognizing it as a priority, and it shouldn't be something that we just talk about. We have meetings and say that we need to do something. It's something that has to be a priority as like, here, these are our 5 cybersecurity goals for the year. One of them needs to be accessibility. And then we need to look at, look at your security awareness training programs. They need to be developed from the perspective of like, well, from multiple perspectives, not just assuming, for instance, that all the users are going to be able to see, have clear sights to be able to see what's on screen, but also the not assuming the way people navigate the internet. So, for instance, we might do security training for email. If you assume that everyone is going to be, using a mouse to hover over the link, or if you assume that everyone is going to be able to see, be visually interacting with the email, then you've excluded like a whole bunch of people. So that's one part of it. And then the policies, just like you said, there's the content part of it, which is like the actual text or the message being passed across in the policies needs to be like crystal clear, and the language being used as well needs to be in a way that everybody can understand. And then technically as well, if it's going to be in a PDF, that needs to be run through like a PDF accessibility scanner to make sure that it's like physically, quote unquote, accessible. And to make and the icing on the cake is to make sure that all security, the entire security and IT team needs to be trained on accessibility awareness. And that is because they are the ones that make the decisions on what controls to implement and how to implement it. They are the ones that actually, make configurations. They are the ones that design all these programs. So the more aware about accessibility they are, I think the better your security program will be. And not just for accessibility, like as a whole. And that way you'll be able to better protect all your users.
So I'm going to add 2 things to what Ali said, because you covered most of it. So in addition, around security policies, you also need to ensure that any images within those policies, because a lot of times there's data flows, like I'm specifically thinking of like security incident response, usually has a data flow of who to talk to first or the processes that you need to follow. Well, if they can't read or consume that information, they're not going to be able to follow it. And another trend, which is actually amazing, is there's a lot of automation around doing security audits and GRC tooling, and those tools aren't necessarily accessible. So when individuals, because Emily's one of them, we won't say the company name, but she is an end user of one of these GRC tools that's supposed to make things easier for the user base. The training has to be pared down for her to be able to consume it. That's a problem. We shouldn't be paring down our security training. She's dancing. We should be making it better and more useful to the people that we're trying to secure. So I'm going to skip a couple of the questions because there's definitely a lot of things that we need to change, and there's a lot of gaps. But I want to go a little positive on this. So, Patrick, what are some benefits and opportunities of having accessible cybersecurity culture and practice for both individuals like yourself and the society as a whole? And then I'll also ask Emily and Ali you from their perspective.
So, like I said, I've been doing digital accessibility for about 12 years now, full time. And I can tell you that if we look just at the accessibility side, when you make something accessible to everyone, your first thought probably is, oh, that digital accessibility stuff. Yeah, they want us to do that so that the disabled can use it. And yeah, that is true. I'm not going to dispute that. But what we have found is when you make something accessible, it makes it better for everyone. It makes things simpler to understand, controls and interfaces are cleaned up and streamlined. Designers put more thought into how they're going to have the customer interact with things. It's easier for everyone. And the other thing to think about is, you may be a 20-something-year-old right now or early in your career and you can do it all. But you may have a family member that has a disability, or one day you may develop a disability. And do you want to continue with your career? Or do you want to be told, oh, you can't be a security person anymore because you're now disabled? Doing digital accessibility for security helps everyone. It's just a matter of when you're really going to take advantage of it. And for a lot of people, that's going to be sooner than later. So doing accessibility for security helps everyone do better.
That's very well said. Thank you so much. Emily, would you like to expand on that?
Absolutely. So similar to what Patrick said, including accessibility as a priority for your company makes it better for everybody. It enhances the user experience for everybody. And I'm excited about this one because I did a presentation on this last week, and it's really important to include ways that it benefits everybody, because when people have a personal connection to it, they're more likely to be personally invested in the solution. So, for example, how many of you guys use a keyboard every day? Or you use dictation on your phone, or you use, if you listen to audiobooks. Those were all originally invented as assistive technology for blind people. Texting was originally a captioning method made for deaf people to use a telephone. And if you use automatic doors, electric toothbrushes, word prediction software, there's so many things that we use in our everyday life that were originally assistive tools for people with disabilities that we use every day. And there's so many tools that will be developed in the future that are going to be they're going to start out as accessibility tools, but will be adapted because they make life better for everybody. So think about that next time you add contrast to your page, or you make some you add dynamic sizing or text features. Simple accessibility fixes make tools better for everybody to use.
Very well said. And I want to add one quick thing before I ask Ali the same thing. So one thing that I would say a lot of people are using right now in the world is optical character recognition, because that is what powers AI, artificial intelligence. So if you're currently using an AI chatbot, you need to thank the accessibility community. So Ali, do you have any more that you can expand on that?
Yes, definitely. So there's lots of, data out there about the business. I mean, Emily and Patrick have already talked, and you as well have talked about the benefits to everyone. So I'll talk about the benefits to businesses. So there's something called the Purple Pound. I don't know if in the US you have something similar to that, but those are just like numbers showing the business opportunities when it comes to the disability community, and it just refers to like spending power of people with disabilities and their families, and that's like billions of pounds. There's more numbers like businesses lose approximately 2 billion a month by ignoring the needs of disabled people, and there's so much data out there. Oh yes, 274 billion pounds. And now I think I'm framing that as a negative. The positive is that that is money on the table that you can go and get just by making things better and more accessible and more inclusive for everyone. If you're talking about, accessibility of like your authentication controls, like your login pages, Patrick talked about something that's not even really a security feature. It's just him trying to put his details on a shopping website and not being able to do that independently. Creating better experiences for users creates lots of business benefits, and not just for people with disabilities as well, but for everyone. If you think about it, like people are a lot more conscious about these issues nowadays, and like people, even for people who are not disabled, a lot of people prefer to spend on businesses that are more supportive and more inclusive. And I think that's it for me, really. And I didn't want to like repeat what's already been said.
No worries. And I think in great fashion, since this is considered a wild card talk, I'm going to go ahead and ask a question that I did not already write down. So Patrick, can you elaborate for the cybersecurity solution companies that are creating software and selling it within the US and within the EU, that they already have deadlines and there's already legal frameworks in place that that they should already be getting their tools to be accessible. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, we already have regulations through the ADA, which has been around for a long time, that, US companies, especially if you're doing business with the US government in Section 508, you've got to be compliant and accessible. Canada has a whole long list of rules in Canada that require digital accessibility. And coming online next June, that's June of 2025, the entire European Union is bringing their suite of laws out, and they'll be fully enforced. So, I mean, that is just touching on some countries around the globe. I think right now, half the countries in the world have some form of a disability inclusion law, for lack of better words, that encourages companies doing business online to be accessible. It's growing every year. You can't ignore it. The best thing to do is to start learning about it on your own terms and start working on it.
Thank you. That was exactly what I was hoping. So I'm going to give a little tidbit, and then I'm going to ask the next question because I want to get this to the pot more of potential changes that we're seeing. So I was recently re-listening to the song Imagine by John Lennon, and I wish I would have already copied what the output was, but I actually asked ChatGPT to create a lyric to talk about digital accessibility and to make cybersecurity. And I don't exactly remember it, but if you could look back at the lyrics of Imagine, think about this. We have created digital accessibility issues. It's a digital world. The digital world is at our control. We might not be able to control everything in the physical world, but the digital world is malleable and we do have the control. So I implore people to take this information and try to make change. So my question to all of you is, what are some emerging trends and technologies that can enhance accessibility and cybersecurity? Ali, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. For both of those, for both parts of those of that question, I would say the word that's on everybody's mouth right now, AI. AI can be both an enhancement and a detriment, because I mean, artificial intelligence has been and is being used for accessibility features, right? There's lots of mind-blowing stuff out there that's really interesting and enhancing accessibility. But at the same time, while designing AI tools, if we program our own biases into the AI tools, that could be like very detrimental for accessibility and for everyone really. So we need to be like really careful when developing AI solutions to make sure that they are very inclusive. And I think any technology, whatever it may be, can be both an enhancement and a detriment. It just depends on how it's been applied and how it's been developed. So I think what we just need to do is like be very deliberate, like as we're developing these things. We talk about security by design, accessibility by design is also something that needs to happen. So by design, we need to consider this as something that needs to be baked into all technologies. So yeah, any kind of technology can be both. It just depends on how it's developed.
So do you see any emerging trends in cybersecurity that are going the way of becoming accessible?
That's a good question. Emerging trends in cybersecurity.
So I'll give one. So it's very few from my research. So there are applications. There's a network scanner that is called RustScan that was designed and developed to be accessible, and it could be used as an accessible version of Nmap, which is a network scanner that is often used in cybersecurity. That's one of them. I know you and Emily are working on some things as well. And I will say, without saying the names, there are companies that are working with DQ to become accessible currently. So that's kind of where I was trying to go. Go ahead, Ali.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, I kind of went off the tracks with that question there, but yeah,
It's okay.
I think something that's important to note when it comes to that is, like you mentioned, there are lots of tools. I mean, there are some tools out there that have been designed for accessibility, and guess what? They do, like RustScan does the job as well as Nmap does. And if you're looking at it from a different perspective, it does it even better. So the point I'm trying to make here is that accessible security tools will emerge. It's just a matter of time. They're already emerging. And at some point, it's going to be the case where companies are just going to choose the accessible tools over the ones that are not accessible. And that's just going to become the industry default eventually. So this is just something for vendors or people developing tools to get a market advantage. Just make your tool more accessible. Like immediately, you've unlocked market potential just by doing that.
So we're getting to our Q&A section. I'm just going to mention that we do have some resources that we have put together to share with you all. I just sent our moderator the link for RustScan because I'm guessing that's probably going to be asked. But I wanted to make one point because there are some trends that are happening. There's a program that has recently gone public called the Apex program that has been brought by Nova Coast and the nonprofit company called Envision, Envison. And what it has done is it is helping people that are blind or visually impaired to become security professionals with a 10-week program. And I'm not sharing that specifically for that program, but if they're able to do it, others can as well, and others can benefit from that program. So we'll provide that link as well in the chat. And if we have any questions, Grace, let's go ahead and get those going.
All right, wonderful presentation and discussion. Let's jump into some questions here. So the number one question that has been upvoted in the Q&A reads, what is the top specific myth that you would like to dispel regarding the perceived conflict between cybersecurity and accessibility?
It looks like Allie's ready for that one. Go for it. And then Emily.
Well, first of all, accessibility and security only clash when you make it clash, when there's a lack of understanding of what accessibility is. And again, another way it clashes is it's the opposite, right? If you have poor accessibility, there's going to be poor security. It's like, and if you have better accessibility, you're going to have better security. It just depends on how you do it. And accessibility is not about, you know, opening things up and making them less secure. It's about making sure that whoever you are, you can access things in a secure way. And it's just about thinking from different perspectives and giving people as many options and ways of doing things as possible. So I'll hand over to Emily. It's like she's like burning with passion there.
I'm very excited about this one. So I have a specific example of real things that people have said to me that real people believe about myths about accessibility in general. So I was applying for a job. I applied for a job, and you know, sometimes they have skills assessments or skills inventories that you do before you take a job, before you get to the interview stage. So I went to take an inventory at one of these places that I applied, which is a step ahead of where I'd gotten so many times. I was so excited. Getting a job is hard, y'all. And the skills inventory was inaccessible. I could not use it. It was reading, it would read ABC, and then it would read the answer, and then it would read like the check mark for it. So you have to remember where everything is, and it was just so difficult. It was so time consuming. And so I emailed the lady because it was a time test as well. Oh, I gotta slow down my speech. I'm getting too excited. But so I emailed the people in charge of this, and I got an email back, and it said, you have to, in order for us to turn on the accessibility features, you needed to set up a specific time so that we could have the accessibility components ready for you, because the accessibility components slow down the experience for sighted users. And I lost my mind, because that's so false that having screen reader accessibility slows down the experience or hinders the experience for sighted users. It's, first of all, accessibility essentially is, in this case, would be organized code. Label your code, organize, have well-written software, and we won't run into issues like this. Hands down. But then also, people believe that accessibility features will weigh down software for able-bodied users, which is it's discrimination in, you know, the finest possible definition. But that's something that people really believe. It's not true. Accessibility does not slow down usability for other people.
Emily, can I add something?
Yes, I was going to ask you.
Software that's not accessible is not quality software. End of
Bingo.
story. So if you want to put out bad software that not everyone can use, go right ahead and do it. But you're developing poor software, meeting poor quality standards. And if that's what you want to be known for, have at it.
Well said.
Can I add something here?
Yep, and then we
Yeah.
will try to get a couple more questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I saw like a comment on a LinkedIn post, so I'm not taking credit for this. It says software, it says something along the lines of like there's this old saying that if you test for, you know, is it 90 or 80, some high percentage of users, then you're good to go. But the problem arises, or the bigger problem arises, when the same 20% of users keep getting discriminated on all software. So some software will be very usable to most users. But if the same set of users keep hitting unusable software everywhere, then that's an even bigger problem. So if you're not accessible, then you know, you're losing users and you're leaving money on the table. Sorry, I keep referencing money. It's like I'm talking to the business people here.
So just real quick, that is an important point, and you solve that problem by having a feedback mechanism and
Yeah.
listen to your customers when they tell you they're having a problem. That's how you catch that other 20%.
Yep. And the feedback mechanism should be accessible, of course.
Yes.
Exactly. Grace, let's go ahead and do a couple more if we have any.
Sure, we have a few here. Next one asks, I have received so much resistance, unusually more in security/cybersecurity than in any other area in the industries. What are some good takeaways to convince or open the mind of others in regards to accessibility?
Can I start this one real quick? So in my personal opinion, if you're able to have a true conversation with any security professional and you tell them and you explain, without accessibility, you honestly don't have security. How can you maintain security if the tooling isn't accessible? How can you have zero trust if the solutions you need to have in place for the zero trust to exist are not accessible? You don't have zero trust. You have 80% close to zero trust. So sorry, I just wanted to pipe that in. Does anyone else have feedback for that?
Yeah, I would say think about this scenario. Think about someone who, for example, is blind and is trying to use a website, and trying to use your website, and then they can't log in because the login screen is inaccessible. That means they can't independently log into the system. They're going to have someone else help them, you know, with the password. And sometimes that's a colleague. That's in all security awareness programs. Don't show that stuff in. Don't do that. Don't share passwords. But even worse than that is when they go online to an app called Be My Eyes or something similar, where a stranger on the internet helps them. And think about that for a second. As a security professional, is that something that you're comfortable with? I can feel your skin crawling right now at the thought of someone sharing their password to a stranger on the internet. So I think these kinds of scenarios, I think, should get to someone who is reasonable. If you try everything and the person doesn't agree, which is, I don't think you'd come across anybody like that, then I would say it's probably a lost cause, but I don't think it will get to that point.
I think we are at time. I want to thank all the panelists, and I will hand it back over to Grace. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you all. Such a wonderful discussion. Patrick, Emily, Ali, Justin, thank you so much for spending time here and sharing your insights with everyone. And thank you so much for our audience for your wonderful questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but please do join us over at the Discord if you'd like to keep the conversation going.